Hello there, we want to welcome you to our brand new podcast. We are calling these I Can't Believe It's Worship. I have a co-host with me.
I'm Lester Ong.
I'm Lester Sim, and we are Lester and Lester. It's so rare that we can have two Lesters, like just basically in the same circles. But here we are, we're friends, and we realize that we're
I actually know 5 Lesters.
Oh, how many Lesters do I know? Do I know 5 Lesters? Hey, actually, maybe across the span of my life, maybe 5 Lesters too. Yeah, but I feel like I'm not always friends with Lester. So this happens to be the one Lester that I'm really friends with. I'm not sure whether or not he says the same thing.
Yes, we're friends.
All right, but yes, we are on this podcast to talk about worship. We want to talk about all things worship. Both of us, we are on the worship team in our local church, Faith Community Church. And yeah, maybe we'll just talk about who we are, where we've come from, just so you understand us a little better. Lester, why don't you go first? Tell us, where do you come from? Like, what have you served in? And just so we understand, yeah.
Well, I've been in worship ministry for over 30 years now. Started when I was a teenager, and I've served in churches in various settings and sizes, from smallish churches of about 200 people, and now the church we're both serving in is about 2,000 people on a given Sunday. And I've also done some weird things, inter-city events. And the weirdest thing I've ever done was lead worship on a boat.
Yeah, I think you told me about that.
Yeah.
Oh, was that the one with the cruise where you were going through the city?
Correct.
Ah, fun.
Yeah, it was pretty exciting because we were working with some intercessors during the Commonwealth Heads of State meeting in 2012, I think.
Yeah.
And so one of the things we were praying for were the various government representatives that had come into Perth.
Yeah.
And one of the things we did do was get a bunch of intercessors onto a boat. There was about 150 of us. and we had worship going the whole time. And we just cruised up and down the main river of our city, praying over the leaders and praying over our city.
Wow, that is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, how about you tell us, what do you do on the worship team?
I'm currently serving as the worship director, sort of operationalizing the ministry, so to speak. I work with the worship pastor, and yeah, we've got a decent team now, about 125 all up. So to be honest, I don't even know most of the people these days, but don't tell them that.
Yeah, most of the time we have new people and they're like, oh, hi, what's your name? We never talk to them ever again. It is, we got worship teams from different ministries. We got the youth ministry, we got even uni kids have got a ministry, and then we have the adults one. So we are part of the adults one. Yeah.
We don't always act like adults, so.
I agree, and you will find that out too. Maybe that's why we're friends.
Yeah.
For myself, I haven't served for 30 years because that's the amount of time I've more or less been alive.
Thanks for making me feel old.
Anytime. I've served for about 18 years. And I started off as a vocalist, and then 2 years after being a backup singer, I moved into worship leading. So I lead worship, and I also play the acoustic guitar. So talking about crazy things, maybe not so crazy things, but I've just led worship in different places. I've led worship in Canada, and recently we led worship in Japan as well. So yeah, I consider that to be interesting, I guess. Yeah.
But I think it's important for our listeners to know, though, that this isn't our professional calling in a sense. We're just doing this, on the side as volunteers in our church.
Yep. So we have our day jobs. I'm a high school math teacher, and Lester over here is a lawyer in a small firm. So I think in some sense you could relate to this because not all of us who serve on the worship team, not all of us are full-time paid staff, just paid to look into writing songs or whatever. But most of us actually we've got stuff that we do. We work in other areas, other industries, and we just serve on Saturdays, on Sundays. Yeah, so hopefully we are people that you can relate to. Yeah.
Absolutely. And something else you should know is that I'm actually not a trained musician at all. I don't have any musical background. I have no understanding of theory. But I've been leading worship and a whole bunch of musicians for a very long time. I don't even know why they follow me half the time.
Hey, but I gotta say that Lester does it well. He leads primarily with his spirit that he carries, and it's really evident. So yes, even though technically there may be that deficiency, should I say, in terms of the formal training, but in terms of the spirit, like, definitely you do make up for it.
Thank you for finishing that sentence. I thought you were going to finish with deficiency.
Nah. We don't really see it. We see you as a very, very competent, whatever competent means. We see you as a competent worship leader. Or at least my family, we see you as a very competent and well-respected worship leader. Yeah. So here we go. Maybe when we're talking about ourselves, we talk about our theological leanings, our standpoints here. And just because whatever we talk about is going to be, like, basically, we got so many perspectives, right? And in terms of how worship is practiced, how it's viewed, there are just so many different ways that you could do it. And we just want to make it clear that we have a slightly more charismatic approach and a charismatic upbringing. So I grew up in a charismatic church. Most of my life grew up in a charismatic church. So it's one of those churches where we'd be jumping around, like, with our fast songs. We'd have a full band playing. People be in their worship experience in our services, they'd be crying, stuff like that. So I've come from that background. And I've moved to Australia. Oh, did I say I was from Singapore?
No, but I think they can tell.
Yeah, with my accent. So I apologize. The Singaporean accent is one that might not be the easiest to catch. I'll try my best to speak well and sound natural at the same time. Okay, so I come from Singapore, spent most of my life there, and that's where I grew up in a charismatic church. And then in the recent years, I actually uprooted my family and we moved here to Perth, Australia. And it was here that I feel like I started questioning a lot of the things that I grew up with. I guess in a good way. I was kind of questioning certain practices that I did, why I had certain perspectives. Started reading my Bible more, understanding it more as well. And I would say that in some sense, I've become a little more moderated in my thoughts. So still, I would still say charismatic, but maybe not so full on.
Right. I kind of miss my full on charismania. Well, I was a similar sort of background. I think I was saved in a full-blown charismatic church in 1990, and I think charismaticism was probably at its height back then.
Yeah, I reckon so.
And quite amazing, like, we'd have church service where the worship would be going, and then we just sing in tongues for like 10 minutes, and then suddenly a lady in the back would just prophesy, and then another guy in the front would start speaking in tongues loudly, like a prophetic word, and then someone else will have an interpretation of it. Very 1 Corinthians 14, actually. Yeah, but I've also moderated, I think, as well. I would call myself, and this is a label which my former senior pastor, Benny Ho, uses. He would say we were reformed charismatics.
Certainly. Yeah, and I think it's just the aspect of, let me know if I'm wrong on this, but it's we feel like, especially when it comes to worship, the freedom of expression, I think we buy into that. But also it has to be backed up well with scripture. And that's why I think the label of being Reformed Charismatics, maybe it's only used by our senior pastor, but we find that that's one of the more
We should
accurate.
hashtag this. It might trend.
Hashtag Reformed Charismatic.
Not diametrically opposed concepts at all.
Yeah. Oxymoronic. Yeah. So yeah, that's where we're at. And even though I was agreeing with a lot of what Lester said in terms of what he used to witness in his previous church, we didn't come from the same church. So it's just in terms of that denomination that we come from, being charismatic, the stuff that he saw in his church, I saw in my church as well. And it's just, yeah, I guess all across charismatics do worship in that particular way.
Yeah, and it obviously doesn't make good on worship recordings, all that extraneous stuff. But I think despite that, we've also got to acknowledge that a lot of the modern worship movement really had its roots in charismatic and Pentecostal traditions.
Right. Yeah, fully agree.
Yeah, so the songs we're doing now are generally birthed out of Pentecostal and charismatic churches.
Certainly. So that's how we stand at, and a lot of what we say will be coming from those lenses. Yeah. So, Lester, why don't you tell our listeners why should they listen to this? We got quite a few worship podcasts now out there. So why should people listen to this?
Well, I think for one thing, as we said earlier, we aren't professionals at this. We don't have.
Certainly not.
We're more like everyone else. 95% of people in worship ministry, all across churches, everywhere. So we want to bring that perspective, almost like amateurs, if you like.
Yeah. I actually like what C.S. Lewis says in his book, and I'm gonna paraphrase very horribly, but he says something about how when you want to seek clarity on a particular subject, often it's better not to go to the expert, because they will explain a whole deal of stuff that you already know, and then when they explain it, actually get down to explaining it, they chuck in a lot of additional things that you didn't need. So it's always, or rather, he says it might be better to go to someone who's as amateur as you, just so. No, and it's also because the amateur that you're going to, he has wrestled with the issues fairly recently, so he kind of understands what you're going through. So hopefully you see us as people who are walking on the same journey as you are, and maybe for some of you we might be a few steps ahead. For some of you we might be behind, but ultimately, hopefully you can relate to this and maybe get something out of it.
Yeah, and I suppose you can see our own learning processes evolving with this podcast.
Yes.
So as we learn, hopefully we just share what we're learning, even if it's fresh, unresolved, still in progress.
That's right. And speaking of that, like, though we say that we come from similar denominations, we don't mean to say that we'll agree on everything. There will be times where Lester will say something and I'll be like, nah, don't agree. And I guess that's where you get to see two different perspectives, and that's where this podcast will come alive. You get to decide for yourself and discern, like, oh, okay, so which one makes more sense? Which one do I feel more at peace with? So ultimately, we leave it with you, but we want to let you know, heads up, we're not going to agree on everything.
No. I feel disagreeable even now.
Good, we're off to a great start. All right, now less of like the technical stuff about introducing ourselves, because we have already said what we do. Maybe let's talk about our own journeys in worship. Maybe I'll start off with myself. Worship only became something that I kind of leaned into in my 20s. Now, mind you, though I said that I've served for a while, I think my perspective when it came to serving in the worship ministry always seemed more functional, because it always seemed like, to me, I grew up in a Christian family, so I was exposed to, you know, your albums by Ken Henry. Is that his name?
Oh yeah, I love Ken Henry.
Yeah, so I was exposed to those kind of music by my parents. I remember on Sunday mornings, my dad would play that on the CD player.
That probably explains why we're quite similar in our worship leading styles.
Really?
I modeled a lot of what I've learned in worship leading through Ken Henry.
Oh.
I've got all the albums.
So my dad would actually play it super loud on Sunday mornings just so we would all wake up. So I actually grew up listening to that. And you would hear like the harmonies and stuff. So I grew up learning how to harmonize and worship music, even just like the small little things about, the ad-libs, just trying to signal like the chorus and whatnot. I started to pick up on all those things. Then I realized from a young age that I would be in a worship service and I'd be running through in my mind stuff that I would do instead. So that was from a young age. But as I grew up, I knew how to sing. I spent quite a bit of time in the school choir. So it was just a functional thing of hey, you know what? If the church wants me to serve somewhere and my church actively pushed us to serve in different places. So I was like, okay, so maybe I can serve on the worship team. So that was like my kind of thing. And I was just there because my skill set happened to fit that ministry. But yeah, only when I went to Canada for a short exchange, it was only about 5 months, that my mind kind of opened up a little bit. I was there in a local church, and even though on exchange, usually students would be like, hey, you know what, we want to travel around every other weekend. But I went to a local church and I was like, what if I tried serving here? What if I actually tried getting in with the local community? So I was like, okay, you know what? I'll write down my particulars and say, if you want me to serve as an acoustic guitarist, as a singer, I'm available. So I auditioned. Didn't say anything about being a worship leader, even though by that time I had led worship in my church in Singapore. But I did the audition, guitar and vocals together at the same time. And the worship pastor was like, hey, Lester, I have a counter proposal. Why don't you lead worship for one of our services? And I was like,
it's okay, risky, isn't it?
Very risky. Hey, I'm thankful that it went well. Apart from,
you could have been a crazy person.
Yeah, I could have been. It went well apart from one voice crack that my friends have immortalized like forever. I remember singing "Give Me Faith," and oh man. It was on the whole good. Just one voice crack at the start in the verse. It was bad, but I remember at the end I was thinking, hold up, here is someone that I don't know. I wouldn't even say barely know. Like, this was my first time meeting her. She was a worship pastor, and I didn't even say about anything about like leading worship, and she recognized something, almost like she recognized a gifting. So I started thinking to myself, is it possible that I have this gifting in quotation marks? So I started leaning into it a little more, and it became less functional. And I think it became more of like, okay, maybe this is my calling in some sense. So I started to grow in confidence. But of course, I had to manage that with humility as well. And it's not always an easy journey there. But yeah, that's when I think worship really became something that I realized that maybe the Lord has called me to this instead of me just, filling a spot. Yeah.
That's quite a sort of progressive calling.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, but I echo what your worship pastor saw in you. One of the things which we might tell you about is how this podcast actually came about, because we were in Japan on this mission trip in December 2024.
Good times, yep.
Yeah, Lester can tell you more about that. But I have to say I did notice the competency and the skill in which you were able to lead worship when we were on this mission trip, because we were serving in the same ministry, but we seldom crossed paths, right? Until this mission trip. And so, I got a bit jealous of Lester, actually. And actually, now that you mentioned Kent Henry, I know why. Because
Why?
Kent Henry actually has a music degree from Oral Roberts University. So he's actually an amazing musician and pianist and guitar player as well. But his albums are super messy. And I modeled my worship leading after this super messy Kent Henry style thing where, nothing has to be perfect. It's just as long as you get that sense of the atmosphere, you're right. I mean, I used to have music directors tell me, why are you singing that song so slowly? It's like, well, Kent Henry did it that slow. But what I can't do, like you and Kent Henry can do, is I suppose marry the technical skills and still be able to sort of harness that atmosphere. I'm good at harnessing the atmosphere, but I'm not sure at the musical side of things. So.
Oh, I don't know how I feel about being put on the same level as Kent Henry.
Oh, no, you're not.
Yeah. Thank
just
you.
Saying you're
Thank
not.
you. I am not. But just hearing my name in that same sentence, I'm like, how do I feel about this?
I would get Kent Henry to sign my chest, but not you.
That's good.
I hope he's not listening to this.
Oh, no. Oh, okay. I will not be signing Lester's chest anytime soon. I don't think I ever will, even if he wants me to. So get that image out of your head. So you were about to tell us about your journey in worship, and it came to.
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh no, I was about to tell them that I wish I had left you in Japan, but that's a separate story, and I'll tell you about my succession plans another time. But well, as Lester's already mentioned, I grew up in a charismatic church, but unlike him, I have no Christian background until the day I walked into the church, and it was just meant to be a one-off. But my parents decided to go back again, and so I ended up settling into the church with no real understanding of what was going on. I can guarantee you that the sermon was really difficult to comprehend, pretty boring. I don't know if my old pastors are listening to this either, but boring in the sense that I had no framework. Yeah, that's it. That's what I meant.
From your perspective,
yeah. That's right. They were excellent communicators, yes. And even though I had no framework for the songs that were being sung at the start of the service, I was still completely drawn in by that. The atmosphere, the sense of otherworldliness.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
And even though I couldn't necessarily sing with understanding, I felt it. And I would say that if I was to put language to it now with understanding, that was the presence of God. But back then I couldn't process it that way. I just knew that I wanted to be here.
Right.
So that was what attracted me to the worship aspect of the service. But one day my pastor came to the house to do a very charismatic thing called a house cleansing, and I don't know if you've had your house cleansed.
you know at this thought, I feel like this is like a spiritual, like Marie Kondo kind of thing, like, does this make you feel peace? It's like if it doesn't, toss it.
Oh no, you don't toss it, you burn it.
Yes, you burn it. Does that give you peace? Yes, it gives me peace now.
Well, it didn't give me peace because she came into my room and I had all sorts of stuff which were potentially abominable to a good charismatic pastor, like my World Wrestling Federation posters, which she thought I should have ripped off my wall. And then she started eyeing my cassette collection, and this will give you some context as to how old I am, because I had a huge cassette collection. And I listened to everything, I listened to rap, rock and roll, pop music, boy bands, heavy metal, the whole gamut. And I think a small proportion of that was acceptable to her, but the rest she was trying to ask me to get rid of. But I sort of put on her face, and I could see that she realized I wasn't going to be compliant. So she kind of stepped back and she said, look, one day when you're ready, you can deal with it.
Yep.
And we left that, and that was it. My room evidently was not cleansed. But one day, maybe about 3 months or so into my Christian journey, I really felt the conviction, let's say from the Holy Spirit, because that's the language we used back then. And I decided that I was just going to be serious with God. And one of the first things I had to do was get rid of the music collection.
Right.
So I took all of the cassettes, including my favorite Michael Bolton cassette, into the backyard with a hammer, and I smashed them all up.
Wow.
And there was literally fragments of plastic and ribbon flying everywhere.
Wow.
And I think that was when I felt that God had called me to worship ministry, although it wasn't matched in a way by what I was doing. So I was just singing loudly in church, and eventually they let me onto the worship team.
I am interested to find out, like, how do you think the pastor, like, sensed that those cassettes were just not good for you? Like, was she looking at the images, or do you reckon she actually listened to some of them and went like,
I don't know, maybe she was a closet New Kid on the Block fan.
she's like, no, not good for you.
Well, I mean, there were some that was obvious, like Alice Cooper.
Right.
The cover definitely had him in that sort of Kiss look with all the face paint and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think some of it she just thought, the music, the cover looked a bit sexy or whatever. So stuff that little kids shouldn't be listening to.
Yeah, that's fair.
But who knows? I mean, I'm just as naive about modern music today, by the way, because I haven't listened to secular music for a long time, except incidentally in the background. So
Right.
I'm very out of touch with pop culture.
Yeah. On the other hand, I have listened to secular music growing up. At small little spurts in time, I decided to get rid of my collection by deleting it on Spotify. Not as emphatic as smashing it up with a hammer.
Not dramatic at all.
Yeah, nothing's flying around, no plastic flying around. But with that being said, it was easier to also let go. Oh, I miss listening to this band, and you just kind of go back to it.
But you can just download it again, can't you?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's why. So it's reversible, I could say. Yeah, but I think in the recent years, I guess, maybe with age as well, as I get older, I'm like, yeah, the music that's coming out, and it also might be because of the music that's coming out, which I feel sounds trashy. So I'm like, nah, it's not worth my time. So I too have been listening to predominantly Christian music in recent years. Yeah.
But I mean, you were useful though in Japan when we were on this mission trip, because part of it was worship related in the sense of ministering in churches, but we also did quite a lot of stuff in the public square. And Christmas events in orphanages and old folks' homes. We did busking in a busy shopping district. And something about being able to connect by singing more well-known songs out there was quite useful, I thought.
Yeah, I think that was a very interesting occasion where I was like, oh, is the Lord using my knowledge of secular music here to connect with people? Yeah, I remember that one. What was it? It was the Christmas party. Basically whipped up all the songs I knew.
He went all night, by the way, guys.
Hey. In my mind, I was like, I am doing this for the Lord, just to keep up like the atmosphere of the party. Just so conversations could keep going.
Oh yeah, you should see his dance moves. You can't see this on the podcast, obviously, but
let's just say that once you see them, you can't unsee them. It's painful. It burns into your eyes. They are horrible. Oh no!
One day when this becomes a video podcast, I'll get Lester to reenact.
Oh, please no! Of the things I can do, dancing is not one of them. Oh yeah, so speaking about Japan, so that's where this idea for the podcast actually came from. So on that podcast, we realized that we clicked. Being worship leaders, right? It's not often, and especially both of us, basically both of us being male vocalists, it's not often that we get put on together. So therefore, we didn't get a lot of chances to connect. But on that trip, that's when I found out that I really love talking to this guy. Like we connected on our level of humor, and like what he said, we don't always act like adults. The stuff that we laugh at, which you would have found out, we're pretty childish.
Speak for yourself.
Okay, we're childlike. Yes, I am childish, but yeah. So I felt like this was someone that I could talk to about so many things, and I could have fun doing it. But also we did this side thing, which is still a huge highlight to me, by the way, for the trip. Every single morning, we read a chapter from the Bible, and we did it in such a way. We knew that we had about 15 days, if I'm not wrong, 15 days or something like that. And I think it was 12
official days.
12 official days. So we wanted to get through 1 Timothy and 2 Timothy because that would make up, I think, 10 chapters, so 10 days. So we got through a chapter a day. Lester's wife came along, and we did Bible study. And it was, personally, I thought it was so good.
I thought it was actually quite masochistic, because here we are running a full-blown missions program, and Lester's like, tomorrow morning, I'm going to wake up at 6:30 and have a Bible study. If you want to come, you can. If no one's coming, I'm still going to do it. I'm like, good grief.
Hey,
the only reason, by the way, I participated in this was because I refused to be shown up as the leader of the team by this super holy dude who's reading his Bible at 6:30.
Hey, no, not super holy. It's not often that you get to read and dissect the Bible with fellow Christians.
Yeah, you were going to do it by yourself.
If no one showed up, I was confident that at least one person would show up. And it turned out...
You're lucky. You're lucky I was too prideful.
Yes, I was lucky. Hey, but it turned out to be really good,
yes,
right?
Yes, it did.
Yeah. We had so much fun. One chapter, imagine one chapter. Well, maybe some of you who are holier than us would take a longer time, but we would take like an hour and a half, like just digging into what that meant to us, digging into how we can understand it better. And we had so much fun. We had so many inside jokes. And through that, I guess we had our teammates going, hey, the both of you should do something so that people could listen in. And so that's where this idea of the podcast actually came from. Yeah. So we were talking about it for a good long while as like a joke. And I guess we finally decided, you know what? Let's do it.
And now the joke's on us.
So if no one listens, that's fine. We have fun talking about it. We love talking about these kind of things. And if you happen to be that one listener that's listening to us, hopefully you enjoy it too. But yeah,
all Lester needs is one person.
That is right. That is right. And I would be lucky to have one person join, one prideful person.
Touche.
But yeah, I'd say this is who we are. We have like what Lester said, and I fully echo this. I think through this entire podcast, the journey of this podcast, you would see our perspective shift, and maybe more so for me, because I feel like I'm still trying to sort things out. Feels like Lester's a little more stable with his framework, I guess.
Unstable, you mean?
So you say, nah, from my perspective, I feel like you kind of know what you're talking about. I think I know, but I second guess myself. So we'll see the evolution of our thoughts, I guess, and I guess that's also exciting and interesting.
I mean, to be fair though, I feel that my perspective has shifted at certain seismic moments in my life as well. And as I said, I started charismatic, but then I've landed now being a reformed charismatic, but I've dabbled in a lot of other movements of the faith,
right?
Like the spiritual warfare movement. I've read widely about the emergent church,
Right.
And vintage faith. Things like
Well, I haven't heard of that one. You got to tell me
they're
more
probably
about that
a
one.
bit too young for that.
Yeah, vintage faith. Wow.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely. I feel I'm definitely a work in progress, but I guess what still interests me and has interested me for 30 years is worship generally, and we're in this ministry, so I think the fun is that we get to talk about this, and you get to hopefully learn some stuff in the process. Yeah, so we'll talk about what is worship. A biblical view on worship. We'll talk about how worship ministry is done. We'll probably talk about some tips that we've learned. Should that worship pastor should she have let Lester on the team so early, and let alone lead worship without letting him go through learn the ropes first and settle in the church, stuff like that. So we'll talk about some really practical things as well.
Yeah. And hopefully we get to do some Bible study as well, and maybe we can bring back what we did in Japan, and just have a good have some good fun just digging into God's word, understanding worship, or even if it might not be related to worship, just understanding God's word better.
We'll avoid John though.
I agree. We have agreed that John's a little confusing, at least for us now. So for those of you who like the books of John, good on you. But to us, man,
Paul is good. Paul's logical.
Good. Yep, I do like Paul. Who else is good?
That's pretty much it. Oh, well, I like the mysterious person who wrote the book of Hebrews.
Oh, mysterious person. Hebrews or Hebrew? Who knows? But as we have concluded, most likely Hebrews.
Hebrews.
That's right. Yeah. So we hope that you join in, listen in with us. And hey, if you learn something, or if you're just thankful for something that we shared, we would love to hear from you, because we're in this not just to talk about it, but hopefully we can inspire people out there. Hopefully we can equip you with the technical things that we talk about, the practical things that we talk about. If you are ministered to like stuff that we talk about, let us know.
And can people click on something to follow us?
As of now, it seems like there is a button that you should see either on Spotify or wherever you're on that says follow. If there isn't one, there should be something that says subscribe. So hopefully you can find that button. If you can't find it, just remember, we're called I Can't Believe It's Worship. All right, so we've come to the end of the episode. We'll see you on the next one.
Bye for now.
Goodbye.